A managing director on Wall Street makes $2 to $3 million a year. It's something we covered in the previous podcast. That's a hell lot of money. I'm sure every one of you would give anything to find yourselves in a position like that where you can take home $2 to $3 million of compensation every year, right? Now, what does it take to become a managing director? What does that person do? What is the value that they add to their employers to be able to command compensation as high as that? We will cover all of those things today. Welcome to Finance Dad. This is Shalabh Garg. I'm a 25-year veteran of Wall Street. I was a managing director myself at a bank. I know a lot about this topic, and I look forward to talking to you in detail about two particular divisions in a bank, trading and investment banking. Titles at a bank go from analyst to managing director. People that join out of college, they start off as analysts. Over time, they become associates, or they join as associates out of master's and business school programs. The next level comes vice president, then executive director, and finally at the top, you have managing directors. So a managing director position on Wall Street is the highest level in the hierarchy of Wall Street. In general, it's a flat industry, so banks don't have like levels after levels after levels of a hierarchy. So even the chief executive officer of a bank at the designation level will be a managing director, even though she's also serving as a chief executive officer for that particular institution. So managing director really is the highest level in any bank on Wall Street. So it is, in the previous episode, we talked about how a managing director can command as much as $2 to $3 million of total compensation. A lot of it is bonus at the end of the year. So one has to wonder, what does this managing director do to make that kind of money? What does a day in the life look like of such a managing director? How do you become a managing director? What does it take to become a managing director? How do you keep your job as a managing director? And we'll cover all of those things today in our podcast. To start with, how does one become a managing director? The most important thing that I have noticed in my career on Wall Street amongst people who become managing directors is patience and perseverance and tenacity. I guess those are three skills you need to succeed in any industry, and Wall Street is no different. You need to be tenacious. What do I mean by that? I mean by that is that you need to stay at it. There's a lot of repetitive work at junior levels. There's a lot of PowerPoint presentations. There's a lot of pricing of securities. There's a lot of stuff and insane number of hours that go on and on and on, and a year melds into another year, and then another year melds into the third year, and before you know it, 3, 4, 5 years have passed by and you feel like you're just aging. But you're not aging, you're learning important skills, you're learning important things that'll help you rise through the ranks of a Wall Street bank. My first advice to rise through the ranks and to become managing director is to stay at it. To not be in a hurry to leave one bank to join another, and to leave another bank to join a third one for the sake of a few $100,000 of extra salary or income. The people that become managing directors are generally lifers, people who have stayed at the bank and risen through the ranks. And that's how you become, to start with, a managing director. Now, one may think that a managing director is always has a big team assigned to her or him. That is not true. A lot of managing directors work by themselves. They're functional leaders in what they do, and they develop so much of an expertise in that function that they don't need or require a big team to help them do it. Many of them do. Many of them run divisions, many of them run desks, and so on and so forth. So JP Morgan currently has 316,000 people that work for it worldwide. Of those 316,000 people, obviously every one of them works in a variety of different divisions and departments. Banks, though, make over half their money, as much as half their total revenue over the course of a year, between two major divisions that are trading and banking. Those are the two divisions we will focus on today. Now, that is not to say that the other divisions of the bank that give out loans and that work with real estate and things of that nature are not important. But to give you some statistic, of the 316,000 people that work at JP Morgan, over 300,000 of them worked in half of the JP Morgan that brings in half the total revenue, and only 16,000 of them worked in institutional securities that houses trading and banking and is also responsible for this remainder half of the revenue at JP Morgan. So obviously the revenue per capita coming out of trading and coming out of banking is way higher than the revenue coming out of the remainder part of JP Morgan. And that reflects in the overall compensation, that reflects in the overall year-end bonuses, and then the quality of people these two divisions, trading and banking, end up joining. To reiterate, there are managing directors in all divisions of a bank, but the reason we are focusing on trading and banking exclusively in this podcast is because over the course of the last 30 years, 90% of the CEOs at banks have risen through the ranks of these two divisions, trading or banking, to become CEOs. And it's directly proportional to the amount of revenue per capita these divisions entail at these banks. So what does the day-to-day look like for a managing director in banking at a bank? Well, what does banking do? Banking is involved in activities such as mergers and acquisitions, such as underwriting, such as IPOs, and so on and so forth. All activities that help companies and institutions to either buy other companies or to issue stock in their existing company or to create another kind of deal that requires advice of a bank from a valuation standpoint and from a deal pitching standpoint. And that's what a managing director in banking will do. Let's assume for a minute that a company like Facebook is buying another company like YouTube, a deal that happened several years ago. So I'm taking a real world example. To be able to accomplish that goal, Facebook will need to evaluate and do due diligence on YouTube. They would need to know what the YouTube business is worth. Is everything they're reporting, YouTube is reporting, is that real? Are they making numbers up? How do they go about asserting all of that? They will hire a bank. Facebook will hire a bank. At the same time, YouTube will hire a bank so that they can project themselves as a very, very astutely run, well-valued firm. And so to evaluate that merger between, or in fact, the acquisition in this case, between Facebook and YouTube, you will need these banks to conduct that due diligence and valuation work. And at each of the, and it's never just one bank, there will be multiple banks working with YouTube and multiple banks working with Facebook as well. Each of those banks will be represented by a managing director at their level. So that managing director will have pitched that deal. That managing director would have valued those companies. That managing director would try to add value to each of these acquiree or acquiring firms to make them understand what the risks are. All of that is being, now of course that managing director is being supported by a team of analysts, associates, vice presidents, and executive directors who will do the work that that person advises those people to do. But the ultimate responsibility towards it is of that managing director. And that is what that managing director is getting paid for. To give you some numbers, a deal like that could be worth $50 billion between YouTube and Facebook. And generally banks will charge anywhere between 3 to 5% of the deal value to do that work. So you're talking about as much as $2.5 billion of fee money that will get distributed between 4 or 5 different banks. So each of the banks stands to make at the bank level $500 million, $400 to $500 million of fees on just that one deal alone. Of course, I cherry-picked a really big deal. Not every deal is that big, as you can understand. This particular deal is so big that even the single bank's commission is between $300 to $400 million. But at the end of the year, that managing director will make the case that she was responsible to bring that deal to the bank, to work on that deal, to create that deal, to flow that deal well, etc., 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 and then command a bonus as a commission out of the fees that bank generated. And that's the reason that managing director can command a $2 to $3 million compensation. So we just covered what the day-to-day looks like for a managing director in banking. Clearly very, very client-focused, deal-focused, slow-paced, extremely team-oriented, and so on and so forth. Now, the mirror image of it is the day-to-day in the life of a trading managing director. By the way, there is a Chinese wall between the two. A banking managing director does not talk to a trading managing director, and a trading managing director does not talk to a banking managing director. I make that point because even when you're looking for a job starting out, these two divisions hire completely separate from each other. You cannot apply to banking and get hired into trading. You cannot apply into trading and get hired into banking. There is a clear Chinese wall. They don't sit on the same floor. Often they don't even sit in the same building. That is how separated they are from each other. Now, in the case of a trading managing director, there are 3 different roles in the division that you could be in. You could either be a trader, you could either be a salesperson, you could be in research, or you could be in risk. Those are the 4 primary roles that you could find yourself in the trading division. Each one of those roles commands a different kind of a personality type. A trading role generally is a much more quantitative one, where the managing director is focused on pricing of securities and quantification of securities and derivatives and so on and so forth. In the sales, you're distributing, and in the research, as the word suggests, you're researching the value of those securities. But let me take an example that will illustrate how a trade flows through the trading division and how the trading division works to make money. When you and I are looking to sell a few shares of Apple, we basically goes to Charles Schwab or E-Trade and press sell, and the shares are sold. Simple as that. That's what we do. But what does Warren Buffett do when he has 2 million shares of Apple to sell. If he goes to Charles Schwab or E-Trade to sell 2 million shares of Apple, the Apple shares will crash because it's going to look so big compared to the total amount of bid and ask and volumes that are available on those platforms that literally the entire market will crash because he's trying to sell 2 million shares. So he cannot do that. What he will instead do is reach out to the salesperson within the trading division at a bank that covers him. That salesperson has maintained the Berkshire Hathaway, the company that Warren Buffett owns, that relationship hopefully for 20 plus years, and is competing with similar salespeople that also cover Warren Buffett from other banks. So right there, the value of the salesperson will depend on Warren Buffett calling salesperson at bank A versus choosing to call salesperson at bank B. That's what salesperson job is, to command that flow, to extract that flow out of Warren Buffett. Now let's assume that Warren Buffett picked bank number A, bank A. Now the salesperson will relay that inquiry to the trader that covers that Apple share, and the trader will sit down and ascertain that with the Apple share selling at $235, how much of a discount should that bank charge to take 2 million shares, which is $500 million of capital. How much discount that the trader should charge to take those 2 million shares into the bank's balance sheet, because they're not going to be able to do a two-way trade. Then most likely they're not going to be able to buy 2 million shares from Warren Buffett and instantaneously sell those 2 million shares to someone else. Instead, what they will really do is take those 2 million shares into their balance sheet and take next several days to distribute their shares with the help of other salespeople that work at the bank to sell it to other institutional clients who are now buyers of Apple share. Now think about all the risks involved. Bank is sitting on 2 million share. All of a sudden a plane goes into World Financial Center or any bad thing happen. Now all of a sudden they can take a huge, so he will hedge it. The trader will look to hedge it. How will he hedge it? Maybe he will sell the S&P 500 against it or something or the else to protect against the possibility that the Apple shares, while that bank is holding them and has not yet distributed them, goes down dramatically before they're able to sell it, right? They will involve research. The research department will help them within the trading division, help the trader know that there's nothing bad that is to be expected in terms of earnings out of Apple or in terms of news out of Apple. So all this trading division will work together to facilitate that transaction from the time that Warren Buffett made the call to that bank to sell 2 million shares to the point several days later or even longer when those shares got distributed to other clients of a bank. And in doing all of that, they made commission on the share, they made bid ask from the point they bought the Apple shares to where they sold it, and that's how they make their money. And that's what a typical trader managing director would do in the trading department. And to do that, most likely that person will not have a big set of individuals like analysts, associates, and executive directors all working for him, because he will do all of that work himself or herself to evaluate that transaction. So it's more lean, the trading department, compared to banking. There are not as many people working in trading and sales as they are in a banking division. There are more people working in research and risk, and at the same time, it is a more markets driven, more risky, more, I don't want to use the word gambling because it makes it feel like you're just punting around to make money, but a more quantitative role compared to banking. So to summarize, the managing director position on Wall Street is a very, very lucrative position. Not too many individuals have it. The ones that do have it work hard to sustain that position, to maintain longevity of the position. It looks very different functionally in a trading department versus a banking department of a bank, and looks even more different, and it's a topic we will cover in the subsequent podcast, of how that managing director position looks at a private equity or a hedge fund. And in the subsequent podcast, we'll cover that as well. But today we covered how it looks like in the trading and investment banking division. I hope you guys enjoyed understanding those roles. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I offer a consulting hour, and this goes to people who are on the way to becoming managing directors at banks, and to anyone else who's aspiring to become a managing director. If you want to book an hour, I was a managing director myself. I started off as associate at Morgan Stanley, which is a major bank, and then rose through the ranks to become managing director at a different bank. So I have some experience with how you go about becoming a managing director at a bank. I gave that position up to start my own hedge fund, but I do have the expertise to be able to counsel you in terms of how you go about reaching that high level of performance on Wall Street. You can reach me through the description box below in any one of the ways listed there. With that, I'll end my podcast. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I can't wait to hear from you again. See you next time.